Hi there, welcome back to the dojo. I am Russ Leach, I'm the comic book black belt, and this is one of a series of videos where I'm going to talk about this book, How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way. There are lots of books out there that profess to be able to teach you how to draw comics, and a lot of them are really good. But this is the daddy. This is the book. If you've got one book to teach you how to draw comics, or to help you how to draw comics, this is the one you should have. It's not perfect, but it is very, very close. It also has one of the finest artists ever to grace comics, John Buscema, drawing within its pages, and Stan Lee writing the book. Now, I was very fortunate to be involved in Draw the Marvel Way, which is similar in its approach. I put in there my hints, tips, tutorials of how to draw the Marvel characters. I've been blessed with being able to draw a ton of Marvel characters for Marvel within these pages, and it was 100 issues over just over 4 years. There were some other extremely talented people involved in the book, and it really is a good book in my personal opinion, but it still has not got a patch on this one. So what this series of videos is me effectively going through all the sections, all the lessons, all the chapters of this book, giving you some examples of my artwork that I feel that I've improved, or I've benefited from this book, and how that works for me. And in the chapters where you draw along, I'll be doing some drawings, and hopefully you can draw along with me, and hopefully it'll be of some use to everyone out there, and if nothing else, it'll be an advert for you to go out and buy this book. I'm using a PDF that I got from an educational download. I will put the link to that PDF in the description for each video in the series, but I can't instill enough in you. Go and buy this book and put it on your desk, because it's an absolute must-have. So without further ado, I'll get on with this episode. So on to chapter 11. This is about covers. As you can see, this is a classic and very well known cover for Nova, and there's Spider-Man on there as well, and again, superbly rendered, just wonderful stuff. I'm going to quickly go through the chapter as ever, and then I'm going to discuss with some of my own examples. The kind of the way I see it is there's kind of two different types of cover, but let's go through with what they've put down here, with what Stanley has written down here, and what John has put together. So the comic book cover, without which you cannot tell a book by. Some clever wordsmith there, wordsmithery. So you should be able to see here the different thumbnails that have been put together. It's the same process as, you know, when you put pages together. You start off with, you know, simple ideas, working out how it best works. And these covers are very much story driven, and that's alluding to something, you know, that I mentioned just now that I'll be talking about at the end. Let's just go through and see how they've put the covers together. As you can imagine, excuse me, the cover is probably the single most important page in any comic book. If it catches your eye and intrigues you, there's a chance you may buy the magazine. If it doesn't cause you to pick it up, it means one lost sale, and that's hugely important for your book to jump out at people. More and more often now, it's not necessarily whether it jumps out off a shelf, especially if you're doing create your own stuff, Indiegogo stuff, Kickstarter stuff, and you're going direct to your market rather than going through a shop and a store shelf. And then, of course, if you've got graphic novels that are out there on store shelves in bookstores, invariably you can only see the spine anyway. So that's a tricky aspect to it. But it's still important to have a very attractive cover, and in my personal view, to say something about what's going on inside as well. Consequently, more thought and more work go into the cover than any other page. Usually the editor will create an idea for a cover with the artist who is about to do the illustration. Then, if time allows, the artist will do a number of simple layouts which you'll discuss with the editor. On the facing page we show what we mean. Since we thought you'd be curious about the contents and criticisms of these layouts, here's a sample for you to mull over. Now this is crucial. This is really good stuff here. The one point I would pick out of there is, if you have time, obviously if you're putting together a creator and graphic novel, you make time, you make sure you put together a good cover. But if you're up against it and you've got pages to get out, sometimes it's like, well, let's just give a cover to someone who's really talented and get it done. So the figures, so that's one on the far left. The figures of Nova and Spider-Man are too small. They don't have enough punch. So it tells a story. It's quite a good story told there, but it's not working. 2 is not bad, but Nova is the star of the magazine, and the editor didn't like to have nothing showing but Nova's back, which is quite obvious. 3 is too much wasted space on the right side of the cover. Also, even though Spider-Man is just a guest star in this issue, we'd like to see more of him as well. So that's the way it works. And this is the one that was selected. We've got a good view of both Nova and Spidey, and they're larger than in layout 1. Also, the perspective is more interesting because the reader's eye level is up with the 2 heroes. So you can see how there's drama in literally the way the image is put together because of the perspective, and then on top of that you're telling a story and getting the 2 characters that you want to see, you know, up close and in all their glory. One point to remember, these are all matters of opinion. Actually, cover sketch 2 is really quite interesting, even if we don't see more of Nova, and 3 has a lot of impact because the figures are even larger than in 4. Unlike mathematics, no opinion is ever 100% correct. We just try to show you how we feel about these things to help you formulate your own decisions and opinions. And there you go. It's all subjective. So many of these things are. So because of the importance of the cover and because it deserves, you're going to have trouble seeing this because it's quite lightly sketched in, serves as a full colour advertisement for the magazine itself. All the elements of the illustration must be carefully put together. Here are some of the things which the artist must always remember. Always leave enough room at the top of the illustration for the logo. So, you know, just like when you have panels and you leave room for text, you've got to leave room for the graphics here. If you're creator-owned, you're doing your own thing, you're probably your own designer as well. So you've really got to consider how the page is going to be laid out and how the illustration works within the graphics that you're going to be putting on the page. Nothing important must be drawn outside the edge of the bottom or the right side of the cover. That's like production aspects. There must be a number of dead areas on the cover which, although exciting looking to the reader, are unimportant enough to be covered by dialogue, balloons, captions. We'll move on to that in a sec. Since the colour on a cover is vitally important, the artist mustn't use too many heavy blacks, and the drawing must be provocative enough to make the reader want to get into the magazine and read the story. Well, that's enough for you to cope with at present. Now, once again, let's trace the progress of our drawing from the initial rough stage to the completed pencil version. I mean, this is great. You can see the pencil version, gorgeous pencils there. And right the way back at the start, you can see how that inked up. So this is a really short chapter. But what I wanted to add to it is that I feel that there are kind of 2 different types of cover. You've got a cover that tells the story, which is almost a compacting of some of the story elements from within and then displaying them in almost like a panel sequential way on the front cover. So there might be word balloons and lots of heavy graphic intensive nods towards the story and what have you in this week's, you know, magazine, or in this book we discover XYZ. And then on top of that, you know, you've got what's going on this particular cover with Nova, whereas the whole point was, you know, they teamed up, but before you have a team up, you've always got to have a punch up. and Nova is mistaken by thinking that Spider-Man is the bad guy here, and ergo we get the punch ups, we get all the action, and then we get them shaking hands and going off and trying to figure it out between them. And so you've got that drama of Nova getting it wrong and, you know, flying in to attack Spider-Man. So that's that one kind of cover, which is a story cover. And then you get the other kind of cover, which is kind of like, I suppose, almost like a film poster. Like it gathers together elements from the story and pops them in a very attractive, well designed, well drawn way. Those covers, I think, are great for graphic novels. I don't think they work for floppies at all. It seems to be more the case these days that, in general, especially from the big two, as soon as we're talking about Draw the Marvel Way, that the floppies don't seem to have story-driven covers in the way that they used to. I mean, these are very old-fashioned covers. They are from, the Bronze Age. And that was the way it worked because comics were more pulp-like then, which I wish they were more like now. But I still miss those covers. I don't think they excite. I think if every cover is a beautiful illustration that's been drawn by somebody who can draw or paint film posters, they might all look really beautiful as works of art, but they're not conveying the drama and the energy that these kind of covers would give to the impact of the cover on the shop shelf, or if you were just browsing it in Kickstarter, say. So that's my opinion. I really like the story-driven covers. However, I completely understand and appreciate that if you're doing a trade paperback or graphic novel, you don't necessarily want to do that because you're focusing too much on one part of the story and you want to give a general impression and impress people with the cover. So in my examples, I'll show you a few examples of what I've done and then actually how that's ended up impacting the way I've finally gone on my own book. So I'll quickly open up here. So this cover is a cover I produced for Unstoppable for the first Interceptor book, and they had multiple covers. They had variant cover variants, and I went for the whole sort of cinematic poster kind of option on this, where you had elements of the story and you applied them hopefully in an attractive way with enough room for the graphics and what have you, and that's definitely one way of doing it. In my book Terminus at Fenton's Green, I did a similar kind of thing, but it's not picking out lots and lots of story elements per se. There's two plot points. There's the train, there's the protagonist in silhouette, and various monsters, one of which is in the book, but it's not quite the same as the movie poster approach. It's got some aspects of the story in it. Then something like this, which is again, you've got, this is from Unstoppable Comics and this was from Storm Chasers, and this is part of a battle and you've got the bad guy sort of shaded in the background, room for the graphics at the top. You've got one of his generals in front leading the charge per se with these robots in the background. So there's story elements to it, but it's still a very static. As far as story is concerned, it's static. It's dramatic and cinematic, as in, she's got her arm up and obviously something's about to happen, but it's still dreamy because he's obviously not there in the background. That's just an impression of the bad guy in the background. So you kind of going through the stages of how it goes from kind of like these single elements in a film poster-esque type way of doing it through to a story driven. This is more story driven because this is an actual event within the book where Dr. Zero actually becomes Dr. Zero. But again, it's sort of trying to be iconic because it's simply just that one figure and the energy of what's going on blasting off, around him. Again, with the appropriate space for graphics and what have you. This is compiling. Because this was an anthology book, this is compiling elements of all the stories and putting them together in one extra story, as it was, because I don't believe this ever happened in the book. But getting those characters together and then making a little story for the front of the comic. I do believe it did have a speech bubble on the front, and obviously the graphics and everything else as well. Until you get to what I put together for my own book, Only Death Can Save Us, where and this is going to have speech bubbles on it as well, But because now I'm not going to have floppies, my cover won't be this anymore. This is relegated to the covers that never got printed. So this was very much story driven, got a bit of a Bronze Age to it. There's lots of, you know, jumping about and action going on and bad guys in the background and references to the story in itself. But I'm going to have to go more cinematic, but it's still going to have story elements to it. In fact, I can show you that right now. So there's going to be a wraparound cover. Effectively, this is being coloured at the moment by Mike Summers, and this will be a wraparound cover. So as you can see, there's some aspect of story to it because he's in a scenario. It's not just like the cinematic one where you just have elements that are put together in an attractive collage. This is a particular scene, not necessarily a scene that you'll see, but a scene of action. So it's kind of hopefully the best of both worlds, where it's exciting, it's action orientated, it's story driven, but it's definitely designed specifically for the cover to impress on the front cover. So that's that for this chapter. Like I say, I think there are two kind of ways of producing covers, and I really enjoy and love the way that they produce covers in the Bronze Age and the story driven covers. That's a bit of a thing. I really love that. But they're not always appropriate for every book that you're doing. So, you know, you've got to find your own way, and you've got to find your own way to the cover. But the aspects of what Stan Lee was talking about in this cover, about excitement and drama, working within the boundaries, making sure you've got room for graphics, all that kind of stuff is pertinent no matter what you're doing. So again, another great chapter and something else to really learn from. Go buy the book, read it end to end, keep it on your desk, because it's full of gems, and you're always going back to it and just finding something else in it. So thanks very much for watching the video. Hopefully you've been watching the whole series. I'll be coming back with the final part, which will be inking. Ooh, going the wrong way. There you go, inking. And we can talk more about inking, digital inking, as well as traditional inking, because obviously this will be very much focused on traditional inking. So I'll be back with that soon. You can find me at russleach.com, comicbookblackbelt.com, onlydeathcansaveus.com. That's my new book. You can sign up for the email list there and in all the other places. The Indiegogo for that will be up soon. You can also find me at Instagram, Twitter and on Facebook. Come find me. I would always love to chat about comic book art and art in general and comics in general. So come find me and we'll chat. So that's it from me. Thanks very much for joining me in the dojo today, and I'll be back with another video again real soon. Bye bye. Thanks for watching Comic Book Black Belt. If you've enjoyed the content from this video, please like, share or subscribe, and come over and follow me on Twitter. It's been great having you in the dojo. See you again soon.